and environmental advocates to urge Speaker Corcoran to include fracking as one of the major issues that needs to be considered before the end of the legislative session this year in Tallahassee. This is a critical issue that affects our families and communities today and those of our children tomorrow. Water does not respect jurisdictional boundaries, and we all know that water is important to everyone. We must take a stand and educate those around us of the devastating effects fracking can have on our communities. Communities across the state are struggling with the challenges of securing stable water supplies. The fact that fracking a well uses millions of fresh water that we can never get back is one of the major reasons why Dade City joins over 90 communities that have opposed fracking in our state. Much of Florida's water supply comes from aquifers and highly permeable limestone formations, which are vulnerable to contamination from hydraulic rock fracturing activities. Clean water and clean air are fundamental to the health of Dade City's environment and its economy. The topographic, geological, and hydrological properties of our city and the surrounding area are extremely unique and sensitive, particularly with regards to the many karst features and wetlands throughout this area of the county. Dade City and Pasco County are part of Tampa Bay Water, which supplies clean drinking water from permitted well fields to over 2.3 million customers in the Tampa Bay area, of which 64.9% is provided from area underground well fields. Heavy industrial activities involved in fracking also involve the storage, use, and disposal of additional chemicals, some of which are listed as immediately dangerous to life and health by the Center for Disease Control. In addition, oil well stimulation using fracking chemicals is not compatible with the use of land with surrounding residential, commercial, office, industrial, and agricultural designated land or wildlife habitat and existing urban, suburban, and agricultural landscapes here in the city of Dade City. For these reasons and more, the city of Dade City finds and determines that the exploration of oil and natural gas and extraction of natural gas through means of well stimulation is a nuisance and poses a significant environmental threat to all of our residents. After much education, thought, and deliberation, the City of Dade City Commission unanimously voted to ban fracking in Dade City and adopted ordinance number 2016-08 in August of 2016. The city desires to exercise its home rule powers and zoning authority over Florida statutes 163 and 166 to prohibit fracking and prevent any damage to our community and protect the health, safety, and welfare of all of our citizens. We believe it's imperative not only for Dade City, but for our surrounding communities in Pasco County as well as throughout the state of Florida. We urge Speaker Richard Corcoran to count fracking as one of the major issues that must be addressed this legislative session and consider the lives, the health, safety, and welfare of those generations to follow in our footsteps as they provide for healthy food, clean water for their families and communities in the years to come. We know Speaker Corcoran is to be commended for his unending focus on transparency and accountability in the legislature. So now, we urge him and respectfully request that the Speaker hold the energy companies accountable for the impact to Florida's communities and the economy. This will be most effectively done by implementing a statewide ban on fracking. I want to thank you for your time and attention this morning. May God bless Dade City, our residents, and the whole state of Florida. Thank you.
So much for inviting me back to Dade City, and kudos to the mayor and the city council for passing this ordinance. I was here last year and spoke, and I can tell you since that time, I mentioned a compendium that PSR has published along with concerned health professionals of New York. And at the time I was here last year, it contained about 600 studies, and this year it contains about 900 scientific and medical studies. So we have added in the past year over 300 more studies that prove fracking harms public health, let alone the environment, the water, the air. This is available online. Go to psr.org. You can download it. We also just based, peer-reviewed articles on the dangers of fracking. There is no doubt that fracking is harming health now in the country. Those states that are fracking, they're seeing, minor illnesses like nosebleeds and rashes and respiratory problems, major issues of cardiovascular problems, increase in hospital admissions with patients with heart disease, stroke, respiratory issues in states that are heavily fracked like Pennsylvania, Texas, and Oklahoma. There have been recent studies on women that live, and pregnant women in particular, that live in areas where they have a lot of fracking, that their babies have a 40% chance of being born prematurely. That's a high number. And, I wear this white coat not so much to say I'm a doctor, but to say that I have a moral and a democratic oath obligation to protect the health of my patients. And that's all I've really done. I'm not paid. I'm not a lobbyist. I make no money off of this. I just want to protect the health of our citizens in Florida. I have practiced medicine for almost 40 years in Tampa Bay, a little bit in Gainesville as a resident, and just a short time in Dade City and Zephyr Hills when I covered for a practice back in the late 80s. So I want to make sure that our citizens are healthy and the children that inherit the planet from us are healthy. And so when you have that many, that risk of babies being born prematurely, that puts a heavy, heavy burden on these families. Not just a burden of caring for an infant that likely will have more developmental and neurologic issues, but a major financial burden as well to the family. So they're finding that now, and this was a study that was done at Johns Hopkins. These are reputable scientific studies. Again, they're in the compendium. A more recent study that just came out that isn't in the compendium, and it just came out in February of this year. And they're finding, this is in Colorado, they're finding an uptick, an increase in hematologic blood cancers in patients that are living close to fracking sites. And certainly that is information is available online as well, and will eventually make it to the compendium. The bottom line is fracking just can't be done safely. It can't be regulated. They haven't been able to do it in all the states that they're fracking now. All pipes leak. Even our pipes leak. Okay, our arteries and veins. Our pipes leak, especially under pressure. So when we get hypertension, increased blood pressure, our pipes seem to leak a little bit more. And certainly in our methane report here, we give a lot of detail on the methane release in the atmosphere from leaking pipes and storage sites, etc. So, it's going to contaminate the water, fracking. It's contaminated it in every other state that's doing fracking. Once our water is contaminated, and water truly is life. I know you've seen that a lot with the Dakota pipeline protest, that water is life, and it truly is. I mean, we can live a fair time without food. Yeah, we'll lose a few pounds, and that probably would hurt. But we can't live very long without water. We just can't do it. And, the toxics that they're putting in the ground, they're putting all these chemicals in the ground that we know, a lot of them, cause cancer. We know that. And so why would we even risk that to our citizens, and especially again our children? Because they have a long shelf life. Most of us in here, well, there's a few younger guys, but, we don't have such a long shelf life. But children have, an 80, 90, 100-year shelf life. So, they can be exposed to some of these toxics and that they're dumping into the ground when the water gets contaminated, or into the air, or the wastewater that comes back is laden with radioactive materials that the children and all of us could be exposed to. But the insult to the body may take 5, 20, 70 years to show a cancer, for instance. You're exposed as a baby in utero, and 50 years later you develop something. So it doesn't always happen, certainly not immediately. So we just need to do everything we can to protect our citizens, and in particular, again, and I must admit I'm biased, our children, because that's what I've been caring for all these years. And so again, I wear this to talk for those that have no voice. So that's the fetuses and the little babies and the children and those with disabilities and those marginalized folks that really don't have a voice, but a voice in our system of government. And so I speak for them, that we have to do everything we can to protect health. We have lots, again, we have tons of data. We don't need any data. And I'm very, very happy that Senator Young, with a bipartisan support for these bills now, and I met with Senator Young, we discussed this. She's a smart lady. She's an environmental attorney. She took the compendium. I think she probably likely read a good part of it. She asked me to actually send her another copy because I think she loaned it to somebody. So, and I think we do have this bipartisan support. So we need to just make calls and calls and calls and get the speaker to push this bill on the House side. And, Maryland just passed a ban fracking bill. The state of Maryland, they just passed it. They're waiting for the governor to sign it. He says he's going to sign it. They've been working on that for about 5 years. So we could do the same thing. We'd be the fourth state in the country that to ban fracking. And I think we just absolutely have to do it to protect not just our citizens, but our tourism industry, our economy, our agriculture, everything in the state of Florida. So thank you so much for being here and over the years and supporting push to ban fracking. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
And once again, I'd like to thank everyone for coming out here today. The process of hydraulic fracturing, also known as fracking, just does not make sense here in Florida. The possible impacts to our economy, our delicate infrastructure, it's just not worth the risks. The BP Deepwater Horizon oil spill proved that to us. Just the perception that our water is dirty and that our beaches are polluted from accidents like that, and also like the Lake Okeechobee discharges, they've cost our tourism industry millions of dollars. In fact, after the BP oil spill, over 50,000 jobs were lost in Florida, south of the Panhandle, even though no oil came onto our shores. Tourism, agriculture, and development fuel our Florida economy. Our state depends on the perception of our waters. We commend House Speaker Corcoran for speaking out for the necessity in Florida for more transparency and accountability in our legislature. The corruption must end. That is why we are calling on Speaker Corcoran today to hold the energy companies accountable for their impact to Florida's economy, and to ensure that House Bill 451 and Senate Bill 442 are both heard and passed this legislative session. In conclusion, besides thanking for everyone to come out today, we would like to open up the floor to the press for any questions, and additionally, the doctor, the mayor, and myself are all available for any one-on-one interviews if necessary. Thank you everyone for coming out. Are there any questions from anyone?
Repeat those bill numbers, please.
Okay, it is House Bill 451 and Senate Bill 442. Yes.
When's it coming up, and what's the future look like after that, whether it passes or fails?
Okay, well, in the Senate, it has passed its first committee. We are waiting on Senator Bradley from North Central Florida to hold a hearing in the second committee. Then it would have to go through third committee, but Senator Jack Lacula is a co-sponsor for the bill, and he's the head of the Appropriations Committee. So if it gets through the next committee, it will be heard on the Senate floor most likely. Right now, it's being held up in the House by Representative Rashine's committee. Once we get it through there, we also have to get through the two other committees, Representative Albritton and Representative Caldwell, and then it would be heard on the House floor. That's why we're calling on House Speaker Corcoran to come forward as House Majority Leadership and say we need to let these be heard and to influence the legislature to get these through and passed.
When's committee week then? Not this week.
When does committee end? We're hearing mixed reviews as far as when the committees are going to stop hearing bills. I mean, as of right now, it's up in the air, but there are still committees that are scheduling hearings. really appreciate it. If you'll stay around, we're going to take a picture. Thank you.
I'd like to get a picture of as many people as possible standing behind that wall, that semi-wall there, so we can show a crowd. And we'd like the speakers.
Did they say they're coming? Where are they going?
We're going to take a picture over
No,
here.
I want you to just be in front. I want you and
You only missed a small
in
little bit.
front.
Thanks.